I'm going to do what any sensible person does after an introduction like that and say thank you and sit down. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here today. Hearing Nelson and Jose speak about the organization, you know, we kind of sold this out very quickly, and today we are televising this series of speeches that are going to be given on energy policy to over 11,000 folks and organizations across the country. And I mean to tell you that when Jose and Nelson started this, we could literally have had the meetings in a phone booth. And in fact, many of those early conference rooms seem to bear great resemblance to that. And we've just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And we're here in the greatest capital of the greatest country on earth, at the Department of Energy, which is leading the way. And Claudia talked about the events of 2022 from a legislative perspective, and we all know that the Inflation Reduction Act is this enormous push for America to transition to cleaner resources as we battle the climate crisis. But the other thing we saw in 2022 that is very apparent to us is that dealing with the climate crisis, well, we're just not going to get the support needed unless we ensure that we have reliable and affordable energy for all our customers. Fossil fuels, electricity, clean electricity, and everything. And we certainly saw that, right? We saw that before really the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia that put such a strain on the national and international energy markets. And you saw what that impact was having on American families and businesses, European families and business, the horror that we're witnessing in the Ukraine as Russia deliberately targets infrastructure that provides power to families. And you realize how important what we do together is and how significant this transition is going to be. Constellation, as Nelson said, produces more clean energy than any country in America. Last year, we produced roughly 11% of the zero-emission energy that was consumed in America, about double our next closest competitor. But if you took all of that energy and you simply transferred it into the energy equivalent in barrels of oil, it would amount to about 200 million barrels of oil a year. And while that seems like a lot, I guess it is a lot, the U.S. uses over 7.2 billion barrels. So we would make, with 11% of the nation's clean energy, 200 million barrels. The U.S. uses over 7 billion barrels. And what we're really witnessing, right, across all sectors is this convergence of fossil fuels in all forms to clean electricity. And what it says is that if we would want to replace, truly, oil in this country as a fuel, we would have to take all of our clean energy, which if we're 10%, it's 200 million barrels, the entirety of the US, everything that's been built since the beginning of the electric sector and hydro, geothermal, nuclear, and all the renewables we've built, would replace about 2 billion of the over 7 billion barrels of oil we need from an energy perspective. It starts to put into context how significant, how difficult this transition is going to be. And keep in mind, we're not just replacing oil. To achieve full decarbonization, we need to have other fuels that replace natural gas. And of course, we're seeing this transition of coal that Maria talked about from Dominguez's perspective as they are moving away from those fuels to cleaner fuels. This is the biggest thing we've ever done as a people, as a human race. And it's going to require the talents of everyone in the country. And we represent 20% of that talent base. And the reason that Nelson and Jose got in the phone booth 10 years ago was based on one idea, and that was that we're not getting our fair share. How do we change that? But also, we have a tremendous amount to contribute. The blood that courses through our veins, the creativity, the passion that we're famous for, right? Everybody thinks of Latinos, they think about passion and energy, and we've got it. It's that DNA in us that is going to help to drive this transformation. We talk about the demographics, 20%, but if you get more granular and you think about it from an age demographic standpoint, this community is going to provide the resources, the people power to the trades to make this transformation. And so the work we've been doing, which culminated in the work this last year, is to create a national organization that could share, as Maria said, best practices in things like hiring and supplier diversity. Could be an organization that speaks to different groups that have the same interest, whether they're here in government or whether they're the national trade organizations. And last week, we signed an historic agreement with 14 of the largest trade unions in America. Everybody from IBEW to the Teamsters, every group that you could imagine is going to be called upon to help in this transition, to eliminate barriers and to allow Latinos and African Americans and women and all people of color to enter the trades, because they're going to create great jobs. My company alone created 2,000 jobs last year in clean energy. And that's a grain of sand on the beach for what this truly represents in the hundreds of millions of people hours that are going to be required. So we sit here and we say, look, this is where we've gotten to in 10 years. We got to think about what we could be in the next 10. And so I speak to you, many of the young people who come out and are watching this. We need your energy in Hispanics and Energy. Now, I saw Jose reference Nelson as an early thought leader. Did you guys hear that? Early thought leader. That's code for he's old. I'm old too. We need the energy of the young membership. And one of the things that, if you're inspired by what we're trying to do, as we create chapters across the country, it's incredibly important that you volunteer your time. All of us, many of us, came from the same background that Nelson talked about I came from. A son of immigrants, come to this country with nothing. As we say in Spanish, one hand in front, one hand behind, and that was it. And through this great country, we created opportunities for myself, my sister, and your families. You're in this room for that very reason. For me, I will tell you, and it's so nice to hear Nelson say the things that he said, and I appreciate the judge doing that, but he was the most impactful person in my career, because at one point in time, he was on the board of our company and said, look, this is a guy you ought to pay attention to. This is a person that has talent, some skill. Maybe we could develop him into something. And I've seen him do that for hundreds and hundreds of people. It's our ability to put a spotlight on talent and greatness that is budding within our ranks that will help everyone, from policymakers to business leaders to everyone who is going to work on this transition, be able to do it most effectively and provide jobs and economic opportunities to places that, let's face it, the first time we built the electric grid and then the upgrades didn't necessarily provide jobs and economic opportunities equitably. But now, with the IRA and the energy transition in full swing, through the great work of our wonderful Energy Secretary and many other policymakers here, we have an opportunity of a lifetime to seize. And it's your ability to be a part of that, put a spotlight on others, and do the things that Nelson and others did for me and are done countless times over and over again. That's going to be the hallmark of our success for the next 10 years. So we'll stop looking in the rearview mirror, and we'll start looking out the windshield. And the future I see for us is incredibly, incredibly bright. And if I could just put in one last plug for my early thought leader, Nelson Diaz. On the 25th, if you happen to be in Philadelphia, Temple University is going to honor him with a chair, an honorary chair in the law school. Kind of first of a kind in the Philadelphia schools for somebody of such prominence. It's a recognition that's been long overdue. And just as I leave the podium here and turn it over to Jose to introduce Senator Padilla, I was hoping you would give him a round of applause for that great work.